In the June 2016 issue of Racer X Illustrated, we take a deep dive into the most famous town in all of amateur motocross, Cairo, Georgia. But did you know there was a time when Cairo nearly ceased to have motocross at all? This is the untold story of Cairo, Georgia.
It wasn't a warm welcome to begin with when we came here, but you know, it didn't deter us.
I mean, when we started GPF, I really wasn't sure that, we didn't know what it was going to be. There was nothing like it in the country. It was an unproven concept really when we started it.
So we had some neighbors that put damp rid in our bulldozer, then, you know, things that, I could tell you some stories, dead rattlesnake head with an arrow through it, steal our mailboxes, you know, run into our fence, threatening letters on my gate. A lot of voicemails on my phone at home, you know, telling us to leave.
All right, my name is Glenn Barrett, and I've lived in Cairo, 55 years old, and I've lived here my entire life. I guess I'm like the local historian. I just, you know, I lived it. There was a track here in the early 70s, and my dad had bought me a motorcycle in 73, a Honda XR75, and so just loved it ever since. Bob Bell was a guy that grew up here, and Bob opened up a Hodaka motorcycle dealership, and so they bought their kids bikes, and every Saturday the local police, you know, kind of had a problem because they had all these kids on dirt bikes and nowhere for the kids to ride, so Bob let kids ride at his place. He had a big pecan orchard, and we rode there for about 4 months, and some guys came up from Tallahassee and thought it was going to be a motocross race, and they ended up finding out that it was just kids in a pecan orchard. And so they suggested to Bob to build this motocross track, and he did. And the track was open from like late 74 to early 1977. It was pretty popular. And the locals really embraced it because there wasn't a lot going on in Cairo at the time. That's kind of the catalyst. That's kind of like what started it for Cairo.
I'm WANDELL ASBELL. I'm an investigator here at the Cairo Police Department. And I remember when I was 14, the neighbor calling, complaining on me because that RM125 was loud as crap. But, you know, I was sort of an isolated incident. Sure. You know, all of a sudden now they build MTF and GPF, and there's literally people out there from all over the world riding and training. And like I said, it was something new, is different. Being raised here in the farming community, you just take for granted tractors make noise, combines make noise, they make dust, hog farms stink, but nobody would ever even think about calling 911 and complain about that because you were raised with it. You know, you just accepted it. That's part of where you lived.
New noise is definitely something that you have to get used to, but I guarantee you the people around here don't even hear the noise anymore, you know?
But when we first came in, we went right to the county and we said, hey, look, this is what we want to do. And they said, we don't have any restrictions on motorcycles here, so if you want to do that, we're fine. And we asked them for a letter saying that we could, and they said, sure. They wrote us a letter. Well, about 4 or 5 years into it, when MTF just started up, some of the neighbors were going, whoa, wait a minute, this thing is getting really big and there's going to be a lot of activity there. We would like our community to stay quiet, or not necessarily quiet. They didn't accept the change that was happening, and the change was actually for the good. You know, we were bringing more people here. There was more industry coming in because of it. There was more, you know, everything benefited.
You know, actually it wasn't as bad as it may seem. I think probably 90% of the people in Grady County love it. you know, maybe not love it, but they tolerate it. Right. And there's a percentage of those, that 90% that, you know, really likes it, they follow it. I know older people who you would never in a million years think they would know anything about it. Right. But I've been asked by some, you know, older women, you know, how did Davey do this weekend? So they're following it. Right. So, but there was that small, you know, squeaky wheel group, you know, that always going to get the grease. And they didn't particularly care for it. And I think they saw it as change, and change is inevitable. Whether you like it or not, you know, you either change or you go away.
Yeah, we kind of got into a dispute with the neighbor that we had here when we first started, and it was more of a fear of what motocross was going to bring than even the noise itself.
Most of the businesses were happy to have us, but there were a few resistors in the neighborhood, you know, that were willing to do a court battle, and we went through that process, you know, and it took 2 years and cost a considerable amount of money, but it was worth it to us, and we were dedicated enough to say, you know what, let's stick this out, you know, and let's see where it goes, because I think we're right.
Like, it was almost a daily thing for code enforcement to get called out at GPF or MTF and them to write somebody a dang citation for the noise ordinance. Well, you know, COLLEEN Millsaps, she's a smart lady, and she done like anybody should that feels they're being treated wrong. She sought legal recourse.
Well, the only way they could get us was noise. That's the only thing that they could implement that wasn't in existence that could harm us and stop us, because we're not messy. You know, we're not spilling oil. We're not, you know, there's no toxic chemicals that we're putting into the environment. The only thing they could get us for is noise pollution.
After the attorneys doing research, basically sort of told the county, like, you know, I don't know if we really got a leg to stand on, because you sort of recruited these people to come here to build this facility, and now you're trying to shut them down, and you can't just like go and do that. You can't just start writing citations and basically shut them down, especially after, you know, you've sort of recruited them in here to build this. It's just insane.
But, you know, recently we did an economic impact study, and we showed that, you know, they're a viable business in the community. They contribute a lot to the local economy. And so you don't hear too much complaining anymore.
You know, and at this point, I think that they're starting to realize that, hey, you know what, this is good for the community, and change is good. So
we actually bought, you know, the original neighbor that we had a complaint with. We actually were sitting on his property right now. So we bought the property from him. He's moved on. We're actually friendly with him now. And in recent years, the county has really changed their tune to motocross.
Bob eventually succumbed to the cancer. And I think that, you know, from his perspective, he could have never known what he started. And I think he would be happy. I think if he's in heaven, he's looking down and he's smiling. You know, he said, look what I did.
Stay tuned for episodes 2 and 3 from Cairo, where we get behind the scenes at GPF and MTF. And for the most info, check out the June 2016 issue of RacerX Illustrated, available on newsstands or at racerxonline.com/subscribe. This issue contains everything you'll ever need to know about Cairo.